Continuing on with Chapter 4 Sticky Notes, starting with Section 4.3, Earth's Biomes, and page 93. So down here on this map, you can see all of the biomes that we have on Earth. Now, these are major ecosystems, and there's a lot of minor ones even within these biomes. You can see where we are here is that orange, and down below, we are in the biome called chaparral. And the AP test calls it shrubland, however, and we'll look at that in just a second. But you can see, let's talk about the rest of the United States because that's important too. So you can see next to us is yellow, so we have desert. And then we have grassland, so sometimes we call that the prairie. We have mountainous regions here as well. So these are the Rocky Mountains and the Sierra Nevada Mountains. Then we have temperate rainforest here, so up in Seattle, we have a rainforest, but it's temperate, so it's not tropical, it's not hot. And then over here we have temperate deciduous forest. So when we mean temperate, we mean our middle latitude. So this area of the planet, and then this area of the planet, sorry, a little bit lower, are temperate zones. The middle here by the equator, see the equator is right here, the equator. So just above and below the equator in this area is our tropical parts of the planet. Above that, here, below it here is our temperate zones. So you can see most of the temperate zones are in the northern hemisphere. This is the southern hemisphere, just has a little bit of temperate zones. And then high above is our polar regions. So cold up here, and then cold down here. And those are our polar regions. So when we say temperate, we mean not that hot, not that cold. So we are in, most of the United States is in temperate region. Some of Alaska is in the polar region, and then Hawaii is in the tropical regions. But, so over here in the East Coast with all of the forests back here, this is temperate deciduous forest, which means the leaves fall off the trees. The AP test we'll call it temperate seasonal forest because it has seasons. Again, the leaves fall off the trees and you can see them turning beautiful colors, and that's what we mean by seasonal forest. So those are the main ones in the US. All right, so on page 94, know the definition of a climatogram, and all of the biomes over here have pictures of climatograms which show the temperature and the precipitation. So temperature and precipitation are the things that mainly determine a biome, but there's some other things as well. So weather and climate, or temperature and precipitation, are influenced a lot by the sun's energy. So how much sun do you get? If you get a lot of sun and heat in the tropical zones, you're a tropical biome. If you don't, you're usually a polar biome. If you're in the middle somewhere, you're temperate. Ocean temperature and circulation also affect this. So the closer you are to the ocean, this can create different types of ecosystems and biomes too, because ocean water can influence weather patterns on land dramatically. And then atmospheric circulation, so how do winds go through, what are the temperature of your air masses. Mountains create certain biomes as well. Mountains can create valleys. And also the biggest thing to understand about valleys is they create a rain shadow effect. So it's a region of land that's drier because mountains block rain from the ocean. So a lot of our rain in the world, and especially in Southern California, come off of the ocean. So water evaporates off the ocean, creates clouds, then they move into land and rain on the ocean. For us in Santa Clarita, we're actually behind a couple of mountain ranges between us and the ocean. So we don't get as much rain as the coast because as the clouds move up and over the mountains, they cool down and drop all that rain. So there's not as much rain in the clouds by the time they get to us. It's even worse in the deserts. Many of the major deserts in the world are behind mountains due to this rain shadow effect. The Death Valley, the hottest place on the planet, is behind the Sierra Nevada mountains. It's behind Mammoth Mountain, behind Yosemite. That's where Death Valley is. You will make a biome chart of the major biomes, so that's the thing mainly to study, more than even the pages on this book, but we're going to write a few sticky notes from this section. This diagram is really interesting to study. Well, it's not just interesting, but it will help you understand the patterns in how biomes are shaped by temperature and by precipitation. So on this side, temperature from hot to cold and dry to wet determines what type, and here are the biomes up here, what type of biome you are. So this will help you, studying this figure and caption will help you piece together some of these things about biomes. All right, so some information here. Let me just move this one down a little bit. Okay, so the global distribution of natural resources in our biome, so we use things like trees to make lumber and paper, and we mine things out of the ground, and we use our water not just for drinking but for agriculture, to create electricity and hydroelectric dams. But anyway, they're uneven. So there are some places on the planet that have more of these things. For instance, the Pacific Northwest, which is the temperate deciduous forest, has a lot of trees, so they can use those to sell for lumber and paper. They also have a lot of water up there too, whereas we don't. In the chaparral, we don't have a ton of natural resources down here in Santa Clarita. Our ecosystem is not abundant in natural resources. And so climate and geography, latitude. Latitude is, think of the lines of latitude on the globe. The equator is a line of latitude, and so they are the horizontal lines. So where you are in relation to the equator determines how many natural resources you have. Your altitude above sea level, so how high you are in altitude affects it. The soil quality, so some places have really good soil and some do not. Chaparral, where we live in Santa Clarita, does not have good soil, but other places also don't that seem strange, like rainforests do not have good soil either. The availability of nutrients in that ecosystem can also affect, in that soil and in the ecosystem as they cycle, can affect the biomes as well. So the worldwide system of biomes is constantly changing because the Earth changes and continues to change. So climate change is beginning, we start to see some beginnings of changes to our ecosystems and biomes. But before that, long before human-caused climate change, the Earth does change. And so places that used to be tropical are now polar, and vice versa. In the middle of our country is grassland, and that used to be actually an ocean way back in the day. That's why we find marine fossils there in the middle of Nebraska. So our climate changes naturally over time, and the biomes change over time as well. Turn to page 95. Go back to 94. Sorry, 95. So at the bottom here, so the AP test is going to call this biome temperate seasonal forest. So this name, temperate deciduous means the leaves fall off. They will call this on the AP test temperate seasonal. All right, and then on the next page we have the temperate rainforest. Make sure you read it, but we're going to study it mostly from our biome chart. And then tropical rainforest gets a lot of rain, but it's hot all the time. So if you look at temperate rainforest, the rain over here, precipitation's in blue, and precipitation's high. And temperatures, it gets a little warm in the summer, not very warm in the summer, and it doesn't get very cold either in the winter up in Seattle and Portland. Over here, the tropical rainforest, you'll know it's like hot year-round and pretty much steady rain year-round in the tropical rainforest. Tropical dry forest is one you don't need to know for the AP test. Then we have savanna. Notice on the savanna that you have a lot of rain at once and then hardly any. And so in the savanna in Africa, you have a lot of migration. And these migratory species will go for the water, huge, like hundreds and thousands of miles to go for water in these hot months where there isn't any precipitation. So here's all the precipitation, and then there's like none, so they have to migrate. And then it's pretty warm year-round. And then we have desert. And so you can see over here from the climatogram of the desert that it is dry. So this is precipitation. It's dry almost all year round. And you do have hot and cold in the desert. And then we have our tundra. So the tundra also gets very low rain. So I know the 0 is here. So if you look back, deserts and tundra get hardly any rain. Look at the 0 here. That's 0 rain here. This is also 0 rain here. So it gets a little bit more than the desert, but not much. Our zeros are in different spots here. So it looks like tundra gets a lot of rain, but these graphs, you cannot compare them to each other because the 0's here and the 0's here. But why they did that for the graph is because they want to show you super cold temperatures. So tundra is up in the polar regions. It's where, it's near the North Pole and South Pole. And they get very little rain. Whatever rain they get turns to ice and stays to ice. So that's why it's icy up there. But they don't get a lot of precipitation. No, not a lot of snow, not a lot of sleet and hail. And then the temperatures are really cold, and they do heat up to about 0. That's not very hot, but it is, warmer than below 0. And then over here, we have the boreal forest. Your AP test will call it the taiga. And here you have a lot of rain, more rain. So you have your good amount of rain and a lot in the summer. And then the temperatures are real cold in the winter. They warm up a little bit and get back to real cold. And then we have chaparral, which is us. So we are shrubland, so the AP test will call us shrubland. And you'll notice here that we actually have a dry summer. So winter, here's summer. We are one of kind of the only biome that has like no rain in the summer. That's very unusual. Temperate rainforest has less rain in the summer. So like Seattle, that's their dry season. They get less rain, but pretty much we get almost 0 rain in the summer, and that's unusual. It's one of the only biomes that happens to have that way. And then we're pretty much warm year-round. So warm, and then hot, and then warm. All right, turn the page. The last thing to know for this chapter is here, this figure and caption. So you want to know that as you go up in altitude, so we're going from lower altitudes to higher altitudes, it's going to mimic biomes. It's not, it's a mimicry. It's not, a rule. But so if you've ever been to Palm Springs where it's desert, and there's something out there called the Palm Springs aerial tram. You start out in the desert, and then as you're going up this tram that takes you to the very top, it can be 120 here and 75 degrees up here. So it's going to get cooler, but you're going to see different ecosystems which are going to mimic different biomes as you go up in altitude. And so that's it for chapter 4.